today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. This past weekend, Sandy Ryan avenged her first professional loss to Erica Farias in stylish fashion, I might add. And post-fight, Clifton Mitchell, who handles the career of Sandy Ryan, trains her. He mentioned Chantel Cameron, for those of you that caught the DAZN broadcast.
She's not ready for Chantel.
I have a high opinion of Sandy Ryan. I think she has a high ceiling as a fighter. I think she has all the ingredients to eventually rule this division with an iron fist. I think these things, but what I don't think is that she's ready for a Chantel Cameron here and now, or even in one fight, two fights.
I don't think that.
Sandy Ryan has just 5 professional bouts, you understand. 5 fights, 5 professional contests.
5.
She found out in her last fight that she was biting off more than she can chew. A miscalculation, I think, that is a good learning experience for Sandy. Not to underestimate the previous era of fighters.
But even a former champion in the twilight years of her career.
Even a 38-year-old Erica Farias can be a handful.
Today, Chantel Cameron wouldn't have needed 2 fights to get 1 win over Erica Farias.
Today, Chantel Cameron wouldn't have needed a rematch with today's Erica Farias to get 1 recorded win. But today, Sandy Ryan, she did need that because Sandy is in a different place, different stage of her career to Chantel Cameron. Chantel Cameron has already swapped punches with former or current champions, faced at least 1 unbeaten up-and-comer with a good amateur background in Adriana Araujo.
You go calling out a Chantel Cameron after one of your fights, you're going to create an expectation.
There's already an ongoing rivalry between young Sandy and Chantel Cameron, this division's unified and Ring Magazine champion, and we saw that play out quite publicly via social media.
You don't want to fan that flame now.
Even if it is something that you're building towards, even if Chantel Cameron is someone you aspire to share the ring with, you don't want to call her out now because you're going to create an expectation and place undue pressure on yourself at a time when you don't need that.
I have it on good authority that Chantel Cameron is scheduled to share the ring with Jessica McCaskill.
Via inside sources, I have it on good authority that Chantel and Jessica could be sharing the ring in the very near future, fall of this year, in the Middle East.
On the undercard of Dimitri Bivol's next fight, whether it's against Joshua Buatsi or Zurdo Ramirez.
Chantel's not actually available for Sandy Ryan to fight her. She isn't available right now, though in truth, Sandy shouldn't be looking to fight somebody like Chantel in her next fight, or the fight after that, or even the fight after that.
You underestimated Erica Farias. You want to underestimate Chantel Cameron now?
Chantel is a very special fighter, near and dear to my heart. I think Sandy Ryan is a special fighter as well. I think Sandy Ryan has all the ingredients to become one of the most dominant fighters, champions potentially, in the entire sport of women's boxing. But what I don't think is that she's anywhere near ready for a fight with Chantel Cameron. Not now, not later, at least not in the immediate future.
What Sandy needs to do is find more former champions to fight. Former champions like Victoria Bustos.
Seasoned veterans like Deanna Prozac. I think Sandy's a great fighter. I think she shows she's got a high ceiling and great dimensions for this division and beyond. She could see herself one day moving up to welterweight, being a force up there. But here and now, I don't think she's ready for a Mary McGee, for example, let alone the woman that beat Mary, Chantel Cameron.
Here and now, I don't know that Sandy's ready for a Mary McGee or a Christina Leonardo, too, for that matter.
Those are 2 former champions still campaigning at this weight that could give Sandy Ryan a lot of problems. And I'm not sure that Sandy's ready for them, let alone the strongest champion at this weight, Chantel Cameron.
Sandy Ryan ought to look to fight a Deanna Prozac, a Jessica Kamara, en route to a Mary McGee.
En route to a Christina Leonardo, too, who very recently returned to action. 2-time WBO 140-pound champion, Christina Leonardo, too. These are the kinds of fights that Sandy Ryan and her team should have in mind, and these are the kind of fights they should be building towards gradually. You go skipping steps looking for a Chantel Cameron fight, you might fuck around and find it.
Today's 140-pound division is a deeper division, a deeper weight class than it might have been some years ago.
There really are that many more up-and-comers climbing those ranks from different parts of the world, that many more here and now than there were in previous years and previous eras. Sandy Ryan is just one among them, and while she exhibits a higher ceiling than most, if she miscalculates,
her and her team,
all things in time, the process of grooming an elite-level fighter with an elite-level talent is a gradual process, and you must trust it. You must trust the process.
Post-fight after the Farias rematch, I think I heard Eddie Hearn say they want to get Sandy out one more time before this year is out.
A Victoria Bustos fight, a former champion like Erica Farias was a former champion. That makes a lot of sense. A Jessica Kamara fight, a world title challenger who is formidable. That makes some sense as well. And perhaps next year we get to see her against more interesting former champions like Mary McGee and Christina Lardatu, who are quite formidable still here today.
You gotta crawl before you walk and walk before you run.
Sandy's not ready for Chantel Cameron here and now, and there's no shame in that because Sandy doesn't even have 10 fights.
When they mention her post-fight, they place pressure on themselves to be fast-tracked to such a fight. That could be a disaster.
In men's heavyweight news, ahead of what is to be their upcoming heavyweight clash, Joe Joyce, unbeaten Joe Joyce, says, I can't wait to knock out Parker just for all this long time waiting and messing about.
This really is one of the more interesting fights the heavyweight division has to offer in the absence of Tyson Fury and the shadow of Joshua versus Usyk too.
Now the fight's happening, Joyce said. It's to give the fans and all the people what they want because it's going to be a great fight. And yeah, I just can't wait to knock him out. Just for all this long time waiting and messing about when we could have had it in July and you just wasted my time.
Time is a luxury that Joe Joyce doesn't have because what is he, 36, 37 years old?
Don't misunderstand me. Joe Joyce is a capable fighter. I think that goes without saying. He's a blue chip prospect, but he's a 36, 37-year-old blue chip prospect. That is quite unusual.
He ain't got all the time in the world to have big fights, you know.
And to date, Joseph Parquier, former WBO heavyweight champion Joseph Parquier, would be the biggest name on his resume, the biggest fight of his career so far. I think he's going to try his hardest to try and hit me, and whatever he's done in camp, Joyce said. But at the end of the day, I'm going to win and I'm going to knock you out. Parker reminded Joyce that he will be the most accomplished opponent of a 5-year pro career in which the 2016 Olympic silver medalist most notably has stopped the then unbeaten Daniel Dubois in the 10th round of their October 2020 bout in London. American contender Bryant Jennings is the only opponent that has taken Joyce the distance. Listen, he's never fought anyone like me, Parker said. He said he fought people like me in the amateurs. We're not in the amateurs. We're in the pros.
Well, Joseph Parker raises a very valid point. Joseph Parker would be the best name and the best fighter that Joe Joyce has fought so far, but even with that...
This entire situation harkens to the past, some years ago when Joseph Parker took on Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte, who even then was viewed as a flawed, vulnerable, and beatable fighter.
Joseph Parker, the then former champion, was viewed as being more durable than Dillian and even more skilled.
More malleable and having a better gas tank, better energy reserves than Dillian Whyte. But we all know what happened. We all know that Dillian Whyte, he won the fight. And I think it's because of what Dillian said way back when.
Well, you know what Dillian said? He said that Joseph Parker was fighting scared against Anthony Joshua and that he fought like a coward.
He called him a coward. Now, far be it from me, a spectator, in what is this spectator sport, to call a professional boxer and a former champion a coward. I won't go that far, but what I will say is that Joseph Parker lacks dog, and people have been talking about that for a long time. And I think that's what we saw in the Dillian Whyte fight, a fight that he should have won, but he didn't.
And I think that's what Dillian Whyte was talking about, that in that squared circle, under those hot lights, it's all about who wants it more.
Dillian Whyte, for all of his flaws and all of his drawbacks, that night with Joseph Parker, he wanted it more than Joseph, and he got it.
Don't forget that Joseph Parker's the guy that needed 2 fights with today's Derek Chisora to pull off one decisive victory, one decisive win.
It wasn't that long ago, you understand. We're not talking about the Derek Chisora of old, the Derek Chisora from a couple of years ago. Not that long ago, Joseph Parker needed 2 fights just to pull off one convincing victory over Derek Chisora, and even in that fight, he let Derek off the hook. He could have stopped him. He should have.
He didn't.
So he's going to knock out Joe Joyce? I don't think so.
No.
BT Sport Box Office will televise Joyce versus Parker in the United Kingdom and Ireland as the main event of a pay-per-view show September 24th from the AO Arena in Manchester. An American broadcast partner hadn't been secured as of Thursday, but ESPN Plus is expected to stream Joyce versus Parker in the United States.
It'll be a crying shame if they didn't.
The fight is being billed as a pay-per-view for our buddies across the pond, and you'll have to ask a Brit as to whether or not that's value for money, given that there are a proliferation of pay-per-views set to land on their shores. Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk 2, more obviously, this fight, and the Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin trilogy, a fight that initially I thought would be made available to those Brits as part of their existing DAZN subscription. It seems it's going to come at an additional charge.
I've been looking around, and a lot of those Brits, they're not happy about that.
They're going to be happy about this? Paying for Joyce versus Parker as a pay-per-view. I won't berate or belittle the fight because I actually like the fight. I think it's a great fight, though. I don't know if the Brits themselves would deem this as being pay-per-view worthy. I don't think it'll be a pay-per-view here in the United States, and if it does land on a Fight TV,
probably run you anywhere between $20 and $30.
You know, if ESPN Plus doesn't pick it up and they don't have an official U.S. broadcast partner, it could end up being on Fight TV at a price point of maybe $20 to $30. And all things considered, I don't think that's that bad.
Though most people are expecting that ESPN Plus will pick it up. They occasionally pick up some BT Sports shows, some Sky Sports fights.
You know, they picked up Amir Khan versus Kell Brook, even though they didn't pick up Chris Eubank Jr. versus Liam Williams. They're going to be showing the Shields versus Marshall card by way of Sky Sports.
They're going to be showing that fight. I've no doubts they're going to be showing the Artur Beterbiev versus Anthony Yarde light heavyweight title fight.
And I think they'll be showing this fight as well. I think they'll pick this one up. It's an interesting fight, a fascinating fight, because Joseph Parker actually has the right base style for a come-forward pressure fighter like Joe Joyce, and he's certainly more experienced, faced better fighters than Joe Joyce has faced so far.
Yet even with that, he's not a shoo-in to win. He's not a lot.
It's a bit baffling, to say the least, that Joseph Parker has shared the ring with the likes of Carlos Takam and Andy Ruiz many years ago, Anthony Joshua, Dillian White, Derek Chisora 2 times.
7 years younger than Joe Joyce, former champion, a lot more experienced. He even has the right base style for the job.
Joseph Parker's a boxer-puncher. Boxer-puncher usually has a stylistic advantage over a come-forward pressure fighter, and that's what Joe Joyce is.
He's a come-forward pressure fighter, a durable one.
Well, even with experience and resume on his side, even youth, even having the right base style for the job, Joseph Parker isn't a shoo-in to win this fight. He's not a lock.
I guess that's how glaring Joseph Parker's ticker problem is. The fact that he lacks killer instinct, lacks dog.
Plenty durable, plenty experienced, he can box a bit, but something's missing.
Something important, and this might be the fight where once again it catches up to him. It caught up to him with Dillian White.
As far as I'm concerned, it caught up to him in the first Derek Chisora fight. I scored that fight for Chisora. I give a damn how the judges had it. It caught up to Joseph Parker with those.
Caught up to him in those fights with those guys. It could catch up to him in this one.
And finally, just in keeping with the theme of heavyweight news, per a tweet from Michael Benson, Eddie Hearn on Tyson Fury versus Derek Chisora 3. Derek had an offer from the Tyson Fury camp. It wasn't enough money. I'm not sure we're going to see that fight, but good to see Tyson Fury keeping his options open.
And this fight would have presumably went down later on this year.
Well after the outcome of Joshua versus Usyk 2 would have been decided. That's set to go down in, 2 weeks?
At least based on this, Tyson Fury's dance card isn't booked later on this year. He's free. He's open.
Bob Arum has declared that he's already had positive conversations with Alexander Usyk's team about a potential undisputed heavyweight title fight versus Tyson Fury. I would hope to do that fight in December, maybe, or early next year.
Bob Arum and Top Rank have had a good relationship with Aegis Climax.
Aegis Climax, who handles the career of several Eastern European fighters like Alexander Usyk and Vasyl Lomachenko, many others, that positive conversations have happened and have already taken place. I don't doubt that.
But I do wonder, how much does Tyson Fury want to fight for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world if he's got to go through Usyk to get it?
You must admit, for a Brit, it won't have the same prestige and gallantry, majesty of an Anthony Joshua fight. An Anthony Joshua all-British shootout between homegrown fighters, homegrown champions. I think everybody agrees. The fight is bigger if it's Joshua versus Fury.
And a lot of people think Fury himself feels that way, that he'd prefer it be Anthony Joshua that wins.
For more reasons than one, not exclusive to finance, Usyk, if he beats Anthony Joshua again, well, that puts a stamp on it. He is a trickier fighter, more nuanced, a trickier customer than Anthony Joshua. Frank Warren, old fisheye, says he's got itchy feet at the moment. He wants to fight. I think the outcome of Alexander Usyk versus Anthony Joshua 2 will determine what he intends to do. My opinion, I think he will return because he's a fighting man, and he misses it.
Then why did he announce his retirement after the White fight? What the hell is that all about?
Why do all that stuff if what you're waiting for is for the outcome of that fight to be decided and the winner to emerge? Or is it that your return is conditional depending on who wins the fight, who emerges the victor?
Tyson Fury's return to boxing from his quote-unquote retirement is a contingent upon who wins the fight.
You know, I think about what Bob Arum said about those positive conversations with the Usyk people, and it reminds me that Tyson Fury is barred from entering the country right now. At least right now he is, until further notice. We don't know when that ban is going to be lifted, but if it's still in place later on this year, it won't be Top Rank.
No, it may not be Top Rank doing Fury's next fight. Not if Fury can't enter the country.
So it'd likely be Frank Warren doing the show if that ban is in place. It's not like it's a situation that can't be worked around. It actually can be worked around. You know, Frank can do the show in the UK, and Bob Arum and Top Rank can air the card by way of ESPN or ESPN+. It's a situation that can be worked around. It really all depends on whether or not Tyson Fury wants to fight Usyk if Usyk wins again. If it's Anthony Joshua, I think he comes back, indefinitely.
He comes back, but if it's Usyk, I'm not so sure.
And the timeline Bob Arum is talking about, as soon as December of this year, could it really be true? An undisputed heavyweight title fight as soon as December of this year, before this year is out.
Sounds almost too good to be true, and if something sounds too good to be true in the sport of boxing, it usually is.
You know, in spite of these updates, everything is still just as immaterial now as it was a few weeks ago at heavyweight. We don't know for sure that Usyk's going to win the second fight, even though most people feel that he will.
And if he does, is Tyson Fury going to come back? Bob Arum seems to think so. He's having positive conversations with the Usyk people.
The Usyk people are receptive to a Tyson Fury fight. That goes without saying. That's what they want beyond a Joshua rematch. Though Tyson Fury, he marches to the beat of his own drum. He doesn't fall in line.
And it does still feel very conditional.
And if it weren't, if you think that's just me, then you explain it. You tell it. Why Tyson Fury announced his quote-unquote retirement right after he knocked out Dillian White? What the hell was that all about? Why even do that if you're waiting on the winner of Joshua versus Usyk 2, regardless of who the winner is? Then why retire?
Most people don't actually think he's retired, and I get that, but he did announce his retirement. He did say that. He himself said he's done.
And then he said he'd come out of retirement for $500 million, and afterwards he said he'd fight Anthony Joshua for free of charge.